Again, thank you all for stopping by today on a Saturday. Means a lot. And if you haven't heard already, the Zero to Sect initiative that I have going on here is a community where we speak about everything and anything IAM. And today's workshop is going to be focused on MFA policies, which is an integral part of identity and access management. Super important as identities and AI and everything else, bad actors start evolving. We have to think of creative ways and sort of thoughtful, logical solutions for our workplace to ensure that our users are protected. And so let's kick things off. Let's move on here. So quick agenda highlights here. We will be discussing weakest to strongest MFA methods. Very important to understand that piece there. We are going to go through a sort of a real world policy design. I'm going to keep it basic. I won't go too far, but if you understand the basics after you get the sort of the visual of how we're setting things up today, it'll make sense. You can then build on that. But this will be just the foundation of sort of the design here. And then I'm going to flip over to a demo. I'm going to show you what it looks like for the user to actually log in to a web application, get prompted to choose an MFA factor like SMS or a push or a passkey. And then we'll do a little bit of Q&A if we have time at the end. And by the way, are y'all seeing my slides right now? I think I'm sharing the right screen. I just want to make sure. Just a quick emoji thumbs up if y'all can see the slides as I'm talking through these. Perfect. Very cool. Thank you so much. So 80% of breaches, right, involve stolen credentials. We all know that the credentials are out there, right? Like it's no shocking news to us now in 2025. If you are in the technology field, you should be fully aware that credentials are out there, right? The dark web. We've heard of this for many, many years now, and it's true. It's real. They're out there. You hear about these, billion, accounts that got, breached or leaked, here and there. It happens all the time in our accounts. And even my credentials are out there somewhere. I know it. I've embraced it already. It's crazy. It's scary, but it's true. So we have to make sure that when we are setting up these policies, that we are adding something like a extra layer of security with an MFA factor, right? Because we know that those credentials are out there. It's just a matter of time of when they're going to actually find them and use them to do something bad, right? The bad actors. So we know that MFA can stop the majority of account takeover attempts. The majority, not all, but it's always good to have that extra deadbolt on your lock, right? On your door. Won't fully stop everybody, but it'll stop a good portion of bad guys. And so here's my sort of ranked from weakest to strongest MFA methods. And what I mean by MFA methods, it's what happens whenever you type in your username and password. You get asked for that next step, right? How do you want to further authenticate? Do you want to do that with an SMS text message? Do you have a YubiKey? Do you have Touch ID, right? So SMS and phone call, that's the weakest. Used to be the easiest for a very long time. And it still surprises me that there's still a few banks out there that still use text as a way to verify you to log into your account. It is a very challenging one to move away from, especially because people are so used to their routine of getting in a text message and typing it in. It's so hard to convince those folks to move away from that because it's so easy to use. But then again, it's the weakest one, the easiest one to phish. We've all heard of SIM swapping. If you haven't heard of SIM swapping, look it up. It's the act of a hacker taking over your SIM card and swapping it to their phone so that they can receive the text message and type in the code and log in because they've already known your credentials by then. Very easy to phish. A push. Now, what we're going to be demoing today will be a Duo push specific to Duo security, the platform, but you've probably seen this in other vendors. Okta has Okta Verify. So if you've used Okta or your organization uses it somewhere, you get a push on your phone. Do you want to approve? You hit yes. It lets you in after you've typed in your primary credentials, right? Hardware tokens. If you've never seen a hardware token, Duo has one. It looks kind of like this. It generates a few digits You type in those digits, and that's another way for you to say, yep, it really is me because I have this one thing that I have in my hands, so it has to be me, right? Or you've seen the UB keys. This is an older UB key, little USB key. You can kind of see it there. Usually people would, put them on their keychain, carrying them around. You plug them into your computer. After you log into the application, you will then get prompted, hey, touch your UB key. You just tap on it and you're in. Hacker can't use this remotely, right? So if they steal your credentials and log in from somewhere in, I don't know, Nepal, for example, while you're in the US, they'll get prompted to tap their UB key, but it won't work, right? This is harder to phish, harder to trick the user because the user physically needs to touch the device in order to authenticate at the multi-factor layer, right? So that's strong. Now, the strongest one are going to be passkeys. Passkeys is semi-new. I mean, I wouldn't call it brand new term. It's been around for quite some years, but it's starting to gain popularity, especially with more people using Apple computers or more modern computers, more Windows devices that have facial recognition and passkeys. If for simplest terms, if your MacBook has Touch ID, that's a passkey, right? I don't know if you've used it. You probably have. You log in somewhere, it asks you, hey, do you want to create a passkey using Face ID on your phone so that the next time you log in, you can use your face to authenticate? Makes it harder to hack, right? Because you have to physically put your face in front of the device in order to say, yep, it really is me. Here I am. MacBooks have Touch ID. Windows computers have Windows Hello. You get the idea, right? How much harder it is for a hacker to bypass that after they've stolen your credentials, right? Because if you don't have that, they have your credentials, they're in. There's no stopping them, right? But if they get prompted for a Touch ID or a Face ID and it's not you, they're not going to get in. And it's very hard because those passkeys are bound to the device in most cases. I know Google Chrome is doing something a little bit different, but for the most part, for Touch ID, Face ID, Windows Hello on the device, you have to physically touch the device because that device creates an algorithm and a cryptographic token within the device itself. It's locked. You can't steal that. At least for now, you can't, right? Because with AI, things are changing rapidly. Never say never with the way how fast things are moving. But for now, it's almost impossible to steal that key from your computer. Now, in a real world scenario, and what I'll demo very soon here, is that you have to separate users into groups because not every user needs the same MFA method, right? So I'm going to design this into 3 different groups. I'm going to put contractors in one, employees in another, and executives in another. For the contractor use case, I'm going to block SMS. Absolutely no way I'm letting my contractors use SMS, especially if they're in and out, right? They're not actually my internal employees. Who knows what kind of phone they're using, right? I don't know. They may not have a managed phone, right? Managed phone meaning the company gave the phone, so we have full control of what they have in the phone. They have a BYOD device, right? They bring your own device. They have whatever it is that they use. But bottom line, I'm going to block SMS, the weakest factor, right? Employees, we're going to allow dual push. We want that. And for executives, right? High target individuals in most high tech organizations, right? We want to make sure that those users are required to use something that can't be easily hacked or phished. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to walk through that in just a bit. So again, the policies in action are going to be per group, piggybacking on the previous slide there. We're going to block the weaker methods and we're going to enforce the phish resistant MFA. So I'm going to flip over to the live demo, but I'm going to stop right here just in case there's any questions so far. Okay. All right. So I'll move along. Again, if you've created the dual trial account, follow along. If not, no worries. So I'm flipping over to my, hopefully you can still see it, my dual admin panel. I might have to log back in just now. Let's see if I can log in here. Try that. Yeah, I'll save it for now. The demo account. I'm just logging into my admin panel. And again, this isn't going to be a deep dive into everything and anything Duo. So don't worry if you don't know what any of this means, if you've never used Duo. I don't expect anybody here to be a Duo administrator, but key things here are going to be users, groups, and policies, really. So I'm going to go over to my users on the left side, users. Now, I've created 3 users here before the meeting. And I can walk you through how to create one. It's fairly simple. You just go to add user and you fill out the information. Pretty straightforward. So if you're following along, go ahead and create one user, and you can name it employee, whatever you want, and then parentheses employee. So in a nutshell, I've created 3 users here: an employee, an exec, and a contractor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these into groups. I bet you could already tell who's going to go and where. So under the users section over here, I've got groups. And I've created 3 groups before the meeting: contractors, employees, and execs. And to do that, just go to add group and you fill out the name. So create one. You can call it employees. And then if you have time, you can create more than one. But for now, it's fine if you just do one. None of my users are in these groups yet. So these are empty groups, right? So I've got 3 users and I've got 3 groups. Now I'm going to move these users into these groups so I can start applying the policies. So I'll move on to policies in just a bit. So under my employees group, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to say add users to the group. And I'm going to add, I believe, the Stormtrooper is the employee. I'll go back and double check. Yep, yes. So only 1 user in my employees group. I'll move back to my groups. My execs. Let me double check to see who my exec is. I think it's Darth Vader. Yeah. Okay. I'll go back to my groups. Execs. I need to add Darth Vader, top executive in the Empire company here. Darth Vader, add to user group. Okay. The last one is going to be contractors. Going to add a user to this group. Darth Maul is a contractor. Only need him temporarily for a very important job here. Okay. I've populated my groups and I've said each individual, depending on their title, is going to go into this particular group here. Now, there's a very, very good reason why I'm putting users into groups. Because when we talk about scalability, right, in an organization that has probably, thousands upon thousands of users, you won't be applying individual policies to individual users. That's not scalable. So we want to apply the policies at the group level so that we can say everybody in execs group gets this policy applied, which means only passkeys. Everybody in employees gets this policy with push allowed and so on and so on, right? Rather than going one by one person. That would just be crazy. Cool. That's the easy part, right? Created the users, created the groups, move the users into the groups. You've probably done this before. If you haven't, it's very straightforward. Nothing too crazy here so far. It's going to get a little bit more interesting in the next couple of steps. So, and please feel free to get off mute if something doesn't make sense, if I'm going too fast. By all means, please interrupt me. I encourage you. Cool. All right. So let me move over to the policies now. This is where the fun starts, right? So under the policies tab, I'll go to policies. Do I have any policies yet? Nope. I don't have a actual policy that I've created. There's only the global policy, which is the default blanket policy that Duo gives you by default. So I'm going to create a policy. I'm going to say add policy. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it employees. And I'm not going to do anything too crazy because all I'm really concerned about for this demo is going to be the authentication methods, right? So this is where we're crafting the policy that's going to apply for the employees group. So I'll scroll down after naming it and I'll say authentication methods. We already have duo push as an authentication method, but if I wanted to remove other things, I could, right? So if I don't want SMS from my employees, I can remove that. But I'm going to leave it for the sake of the demo. This isn't a real organization. This isn't a real actual policy that's going out into the world. But something important that I want to do here, though, for the dual push for my employees, I want to make sure that when the employee, the stormtrooper, logs into the web application, they won't only get a push to approve, but they have to actually type in digits into their phone to approve. I don't know if you've seen this before. Microsoft does this, Okta does this. A lot of vendors are doing this now, right? Where not only are you having to approve, but you have to type in some numbers. That extra step. It's a little bit of friction for the user experience, but the security goes up higher when you do that. So I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a bit. So for the employee, I'm saying, yep, I want them to get a push on their phone, a notification on their phone, but I also want them to type something in just to make sure. We're going to make it harder for the hackers here. We want to frustrate the hackers, right? Cool. I'll say create the policy. Keeping it simple here. I'm going to move on and do the next ones, which are going to be the contractors. Same concept. I'm going down to authentication methods. And for these guys, I'm going to remove SMS. Right? And then everything else should be fine. Let's remove bypass code too. I don't want anybody from the help desk to say, yeah, they called in and I gave them a bypass code. Essentially, the bypass code will let you bypass MFA, right? So I don't want that for my contractors. I'm going to create the policy. I see a question. Are you keeping the questions for the end? We're going to do a Q&A at the end, but if you have a question now as we're talking through, please feel free to jump in. Okay.
Okay. The question that I have, you just pushed like a dual code policy. Is that what it is
Yes, for the employees, you mean?
for the employees? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a question I have. Like there's a key that I know of, like a UB key. Is that related to the same thing as the dual push?
It's slightly different. The dual push is going to be a notification from the Dual Mobile app on your phone that says, "Hey, do you want to approve this login? Hit OK or hit yes." The key, there's a hardware token section at the bottom. That would be more like like a UB key, right? You got a little UB key, so that's slightly different. This is more hardware physical. The other one's digital on your phone, the push itself.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. No worries. Good question. So yes, the dual push requires the user to have Dual Mobile on their phone. It's an app called Dual Mobile. Okay. So last one is going to be, I'm going to call this execs. And I'm going to go down to authentication methods. Now for this one, let's see. I'm going to remove SMS. I don't want my executives to be getting text codes. I don't want bypass codes. They can use hardware tokens. I'll leave that there. It's a strong one. WebAuthn, right? If they have Touch ID, they can most definitely use that. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to remove dual push. Because in this policy, I'm saying you have to have a hardware token or some sort of Touch ID, Face ID to make it extremely difficult to be hacked, right? And this is, again, only for my executives. I'm going to create the policy. So we've got 3 policies. Now, they're not being applied to anybody just yet, right? So nobody's going to receive these just yet because I'm not really applying them yet. So I'm going to go to applications. And in my applications in Duo, I've created or I've added one application, which is a WordPress application. And literally all I went to do is clicked on the add application. I searched for WordPress and I added the integration or the application. I'm not going to do it again, but that's how you do that. You can choose many other applications, but for demo purposes, WordPress is going to be the easiest one to show. You could also do something like Salesforce or Okta. It's a bit more involved in terms of the setup. Nothing too crazy. It's very straightforward. But if you want to do quick testing on a web application with MFA policies and Duo, choose the WordPress option. Now, with WordPress, I'm going to click on that. It requires a bit of configuration. I won't walk through the entire configuration side of things, but really all you need to keep in mind here is ensuring that the access is enabled for everybody and that the details here, you know how to get to these sections here because you're going to need this whenever you set up the Duo application in WordPress. And so if you don't know what WordPress is, never heard of it, it's a web application that lets you create and host your own websites. And so I came across this handy dandy application called Local WP. In a nutshell, it lets you host a WordPress website on your computer locally, right? So you don't have to pay for hosting. You don't have to have a server. Your computer is essentially like your server, right? I have one running now. All I did was created one, clicked on the plus when you download WP, local WP. I created a new site. I gave it a name. I got my administrator credentials, and that's it. It was very straightforward. Again, we won't walk through the full setup on this, but if you have questions on how to set this up after the meeting, we can discuss it via the workshop. But again, nothing too crazy, nothing too technical. But for this demo, I've got WordPress, a website, very basic, nothing fancy, running on my computer here. So in my WordPress website, this is what it looks like, right? If you're familiar with WordPress, you know that this is the dashboard for WordPress. If you're following along, once you get this up and running, you'll have to go to plugins in WordPress and look for the Duo Universal plugin. This is the plugin from Duo, right? That's going to integrate the Duo MFA policies into WordPress. And literally, you just go to add plugin, you do a search for Duo. There's two. You're going to want to use the Duo Universal, which is the newer one. You activate it, you install it. Once you have it in your WordPress site, you're going to go to settings and see these are the three main sections here. When you flip back to your Duo application, so if I go to applications, I only have one right now, the WordPress one. Here are the details that I need to provide that WordPress plugin. Client ID, client secret, API hostname. What I've done, I've copied and pasted those into the plugin settings for the Duo Universal plugin in WordPress and saved the changes. And that's it. That's all you have to do in terms of the plugin piece. Now, another important piece here for WordPress is that we have to create those user accounts, right? So the same users that I created in the Duo piece, I need to create them here. So in WordPress, if I go to users, or users, I already have one, which is the Stormtrooper. I'm going to create, we try the exec. So I'm going to go to add user. Again, I'm still in WordPress under the users tab. I'm going to call this one dvader. Let's do dvader. And you can call it whatever you want. Give it whatever email you want. Just bear with me here while I type all this in. Okay, I don't need a website. Let's just give them a password. Does it not like that? Okay, let's try another one. Okay. What is it not liking? Oh, confirm use of weak password. That's fine. It's not weak. I know it's not. Okay. I'm going to add the user. Remember, Darth Vader is the user in my Duo account. That's part of the executive group. I've got an employee and I've got Darth Vader. I'm going to go back and edit the user that I just created. I'm going to change this guy into an administrator. That way we can go through the whole process of the user logging into the WordPress admin panel. Save that, update that. Okay. Okay. I'm going to flip back to Duo only because now that I have two users, I can go back and see what that is going to look like in terms of the policy. So policies, I'm going to click on policies, go to policies. Okay, I've got my policies there. Now, if I go to my applications, go back to applications, and I'm going to go into my WordPress app, still in Duo. I'm going to apply a application group policy. Now, what this does is that when a user accesses the WordPress application that I'm protecting with Duo, it's going to look at the policy engine and it's going to say, okay, is there a group policy? Yes, no, move along. Is there an application policy, which means only applies to the specific application? Yes, no, move along until it reaches the global policy, which is, again, the default blanket policy for the entire application. So I'm going to add a group policy. I'm going to add an execs group policy. And which groups? I'm going to say execs. I'm going to apply the policy. Okay, we've got an execs policy so far. I'm going to add another one. I'm going to add a employees policy that applies to the employees groups. Right? So far I've got two policies. I could add the third one, but I'm just going to show you with these two for now, just so we can see what that looks like, and then we'll move on if we have time. So I'm going to stop here just to recap what I've done. I've moved a little fast, but it's okay. We could always rewind. The application that I'm protecting in Duo, right, is WordPress, which means if somebody logs into WordPress as an admin, they're going to get prompted to MFA via Duo. Now, within the application itself, I'm saying I want two policies to apply here to two individual groups, one for employees, one for execs. Everybody else that doesn't fall into these categories or these groups is going to get the global policy, which again, it opens it up to just mostly default, but still pretty strong. And so what does that look like in terms of the actual user flow? I'm going to flip back because we know if we go to employees, we're saying my employee, my Stormtrooper employee should get a dual push, but they have to enter in the code, right? The dual push code. So let's do that now. I'm going to log out. This is WordPress here. Let's see what happens if I log in as Stormtrooper. It's going to be dependent on whether or not I remember the password. Let's see. It is. Let's try this. There's Duo. Now, I'm going to cancel this because it's wanting me to use my YubiKey, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say other options. And I do have other options to MFA. It just remembers the last one that I used, which is my YubiKey, which I can use it. That would have been the easiest route, but I'm going to say dual push. Now, on my phone now, I just got a notification. Are you logging in? Additional verification needed. Now, I don't know if you can see this. You probably can't. I have now a window where I type in these three digits here. So 663. I'm going to verify. I just hit verify on my phone. I got the approval on my phone and I'm in. So so why did I get prompted for the 3 digits? Why? Because the engine policy in Duo said, "Oh, this user is in this group. I should apply this policy that's going to prompt them to use the code." Right? And so hopefully it's starting to make sense in terms of how the user will be treated based on the group for those MFA factors. Now, I want to show you what the exec looks like, right? So none of those other options. Now, this might be a little tricky. I may have to pre-enroll, but let's see. I might get an error, but let's test it out. Things can go wrong in a live demo, so I'm always up for the risk here. So we know that we have a user that I just created in WordPress called Darth Vader, right? With this email address here. So if I log out and if I type in their phone number or their email and log in, okay. So this is what the enrollment window looks like, right? Only because this is the very first time that this user's logging in. Duo is saying, "Hey, I don't recognize you, but I know you're in the system, but this is the first time that you're logging in." So I get a couple of options to enroll, right? And what does enrollment mean? Enrollment means this is the part of the login. If you're logging in for the first time into the web application and Duo detects that you're a user, it's going to ask you what MFA factor do you want to enroll into your profile so that you can use that MFA method or factor next time. So I only get a few options: Touch ID, Duo Mobile, or security key. I'm going to say Touch ID. Let's see what happens. Set up Touch ID. I'm going to say continue. I'm going to create a pass key. Now, typically, and I think I'm seeing this because I don't have Touch ID on my keyboard for my Mac now. The one that I'm using doesn't have the Touch ID capability, but I'm going to say create because it looks like Chrome allows you to create a pass key to use for your web applications. So I've added Touch ID. I don't want to add any more devices. And I'm going to log in again with Duo. It's going to ask me for Touch ID. Typically, again, if I had Touch ID on my MacBook, I would just touch the Touch ID button and not be in. But because I'm using Chrome, Chrome is allowing me to use a passkey, but I need to type in a password. Is this your device? No, it's not. Other people use it. Just saying that for this demo. And so I'm in. I'm going to go back because I want to see that. I want to see the whole flow again to ensure that the policy is being applied. Because if you remember the exec's policy, I'll go back to the policies view. The exec's policy, if I click on it, there's only one thing that I changed, which was you can only allow WebAuthn, roaming authenticators, and hardware tokens. Right, so I'm going to show you what that looks like in the full, the whole flow again, because we went through enrollment. That's what it looks like for the first time. But let's go back. I'm going to do one more log out. Darth Vader. No. Save it. No. Okay. Try that again. Okay. I don't need to update now. I'm going to skip for now. Oh, so check this out. That I don't see any other option to get push or anything else. So I'm going to cancel this because if I'm an exec and I say, but wait a minute, I want to use my push. I want to use Duo to send me a push. Like that's easier for me. I'm going to say, no, I don't want to do this. I'm going to say other options. Oh, and so check this out. I just went to the other options button there that essentially allows you to use something else than what it thinks you want to use. Um, I only get a couple of options: Touch ID and bypass code. I left bypass code there, but that we can remove that later. I don't have any other option. I can't use a text message to receive a code to MFA in. Why? Because we set that in the exec's policy to not allow for Duo push, to not allow for SMS. This is something else. Remove that bypass code for now. But essentially, in a nutshell, yeah. So Duo is saying, hey, I see who you are. You match this group. Oh, and by the way, this group has this policy that doesn't allow certain things. if you want to MFA. And so I'm only left with really just a few. If I say other options, Touch ID or a bypass code from my help desk, that's really the only way to get in. So I'm going to say Touch ID. Touch my computer, right, in the real world to use Touch ID, and I'm in. Is it clicking so far in terms of the users in a group? That group has a policy. That policy is in this application called WordPress. And Duo is able to tie all that in and say, hold up, you are only allowed to use strong authentication methods. Why? Because you're an exec. And why? Because you're a big target, right? We're going to be very, very careful with your login experience. Now, again, this is going to vary from company to company. This is a bit more on the extreme side of security. But again, if you're a financial institution, some sort of organization that is heavy, heavy on the security side, heavy, heavy on the sensitive information side, you're going to want to consider these things, right? It's not unusual to see stuff like this, but it varies, right? I mean, you probably won't see this in, your local, office or anything like that, right? But in high stakes organizations, global organizations, they're constantly being attacked every single day. You're going to want to make sure that people are fully secured and they're not using some the weakest factors there. Now, I can go through and show you what the contractor or the other one looks like. But again, I think you're getting it here. I think, right? I don't see a lot of questions so far. But that's really, really in a nutshell how those MFA policies come into play from weakest to strongest. And this can vary based on your organization because what you're going to want to do is manage the user friction, right? So how frustrated are your users on a day-to-day basis when they have to do their job with how secure you want the organization to be. It's something that's like sort of a tightrope balance, right? You have to make sure that people are happy, people are able to do their job, but at the same time, we're keeping people secure. I'm going to pause again for a few seconds just in case any questions have come up so far. So, best policies, practices, right? You phase out SMS and phone. You don't just like rip it out and say, okay, everybody, we're not using text message the next day. People are going to go crazy about that because they're so used to receiving the text message on their phone to log in. And really, what that text message flow looks like when we log into the application, one of those options would be receive a text code on your phone so you can type it in. But again, it's the weakest, right? And the phone, again, you get a phone call saying, press 1 to log in, right? You press 1, you're in the application. You can start with a push and then move on to passkeys, hardware tokens, anything that's going to be a higher security there. Now, again, it's a journey. It's not one day to another. It takes a lot of planning depending on the organization, but it should be conversations that should be in the works, in the mix, right? So if you're at work and you're part of an organization that's using certain policies, this might be a good opportunity to say, hey, why are we using text messages, right? And that's, again, another way for you to start incorporating yourself into the identity and access management conversations by spotting out these details, such as these, right? You apply policies by the group. There isn't a one size fits all. Again, it all depends on the user group and the use case. And again, the thing that I keep saying over and over again is the usability plus the security. Don't frustrate your users. Frustrate the hackers, but not your users, but still keep it secure. So not all MFA is equal, right? It all depends on the groups and the org. Use policies, use it at the group level, and aim for phish resistant MFA, right? Your passkeys, your touch ID, Windows Hello. That is going to be the futures. And eventually passwords are going to go away. Hopefully, right? Only people who love passwords are the hackers. And they know how to get them. Right? So with passkeys, we can make it much harder for those attackers to log into the systems and take over. And that's my spiel. I want to thank y'all for stopping by. If you're watching this on the replay, join our Discord. We've got some interesting folks in there sharing all kinds of information. These workshops will be on a monthly basis. This is number 4. So look out for number 5. It's coming soon. Follow the YouTube channel. That's where I'll be posting all the replays. I've got some study kits on Patreon if you're thinking about getting certified in either Okta or Entra. But stay involved. Feel free. Throw in your questions. Don't be shy. We're all here to help. Feel free to reach out to me directly too if you have any questions so far. All right, y'all. Well, again, thanks for coming. Appreciate y'all. Let's keep the conversation rolling, and I hope y'all have an amazing weekend. I will catch y'all on the next one.